All right, it is 4:05. Thank you everyone for coming. Elsa, if you could start us off.
Yes, absolutely. Can everyone hear me first of all? I'm just going to start the video as well. And I think all the speakers should probably have the video enabled as well. So bonjour and hi everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion on overcoming startup challenges, advice from local trailblazers. My name is Elsa Levy. I'm the communications manager at CEIM, and I will be your co-host along with Tom Vites, who is the senior director of application at CANARIE. So before we get started, maybe just a few housekeeping items. First of all, as you can see, this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available for future public access. Also, we really want this session to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function that's located at the bottom of your screen. I will be raising them on your behalf, so do identify which panelist you want your questions addressed to. We might not be able to answer all of them, but we will certainly be taking time at the end of the session to answer your questions. Also, we will try our very best to speak as clearly and loudly as possible, but you can use the raise your hand, I believe, function too, to let us know if you're experiencing some audio issues, for example. Finally, maybe just a few words about CEIM. So CEIM stands for Centre d'Entreprise et d'Innovation de Montréal. We are an incubator and accelerator that's located in downtown Montreal, in the old Montreal area. And we've been around for close to 20 years now. And our goal is essentially to support young entrepreneurs, so early stage and growth stage companies, by providing a full range of services that are tailored to their specific needs, and all through key phases of development. So from market validation to strategy planning to commercialization tactics, all the way through to international business development. Our goal is to help startup launch and build successful and sustainable businesses. So as you can see, overcoming startup challenges is really what CEIM is all about. And I'm really excited to get this discussion started. So without further ado, I will pass the mic over onto Tom, who can tell you a little bit more about his organization as well. Tom, over to you.
Thank you very much, Elsa. I'm very happy and honored to be here today. I've been looking forward to this panel discussion for some time. Before a brief introduction about Canary, I would like to thank CEIM for partnering with Canary in co-hosting today's event, and especially thank Elsa for looking after the promotion and logistics that made today's event possible. Canary is funded by the Canadian government, and our mission is to design and deliver digital infrastructure and drive its adoption for research, education, and innovation. To support private sector innovation, we enable startups to get their products and services to market faster by providing free and only free access to cloud resources and to booster packs, which are curated packages of expertise about a specific emerging technology. These booster packs are built by experienced Canadian businesses who have developed products or services using that technology and are gracious enough and willing to share their knowledge with early stage startups. This program is known as DAIR, which stands for Digital Accelerator for Innovation and Research. DAIR was launched back in 2011 prior to commercial cloud availability in Canada and has accepted over 1,500 participants since its inception. The DAIR program continues to thrive and evolve to help Canadian entrepreneurs learn about cloud independence and new technology. It also provides a platform to develop and test their products and services, gather market feedback through customer trials, and showcase innovations to potential investors in a risk and cost-free environment. So without further delay, the reason you've all taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us today, to listen to and get advice from our respected panelists who have been through many challenges of starting a successful business. Allow me to introduce now today's panel. Our first panelist is Jeffrey Dungeon. Jeff is a co-founder and CEO of Really Active, based out of Montreal, which is in its 9th year and continues to see traction and growth every passing year. Really Active's technology platform makes it possible to observe who, what, is where, and how in real time in any physical space. Not only is Jeff a past participant to the DAIR program, who benefited from free access to cloud resources in the early days of his company, he's also a strong advocate for open source software. Recently, Jeff's company has contributed to the DAIR program with the Internet of Things booster pack that you can access for free, and has also many more contributions on his own public open source repository known as getperito.com. Welcome, Jeff. Our next panelist is Dev Paul, CEO and founder at Bluewave AI in Canada, Ontario. Bluewave AI is committed to accelerating the adoption and use of renewable energy sources like wind and solar across communities and corporations to realize the utility of the future. Bluewave AI's grid energy optimization platform uses artificial intelligence and big data analytics in order to balance the cost, availability, and reliability of different energy sources, renewable and non-renewable, with energy demand in real time. Dev's company also recently contributed to DAIR with another booster pack on machine learning that you can also access through our program. Welcome, Dev.
Thank you.
Next on the panel, I'm pleased to introduce Margaret Magdison, CEO and founder of Ananda Devices. Ananda stands for Advanced Nano Design Applications. Her company's mission is to increase research capacity and competitiveness by developing and applying nano and micro technology platforms to improve biomedical research and diagnostics. Her innovation has the potential to dramatically accelerate the drug development cycle of new therapies for people in desperate need. If you haven't viewed her TEDx Montreal talk titled Bringing Cell Culture into the 21st Century, I strongly recommend it. It's simply fascinating to learn about the work her and her team at Ananda is doing. So welcome, Margaret.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And finally, we have Mike Lee, founder of Fundica. Fundica is a privately held Canadian financial services corporation, also based in Montreal, that matches businesses, particularly startups and SMEs in the technology sector, with appropriate sources of funding. Fundica's database of funding opportunities is accessible via their proprietary search engine on their website, fundica.com. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Tom.
So on to the questions. Jeff, let me begin with you. If you were to rewind back 8-9 years ago when Really Active was in the idea and discovery phase of development, what do you remember as your biggest challenge or perhaps a rookie mistake you made, and how did you manage to get past it?
Thanks, Tom. So hope everyone can hear me okay. And as you mentioned, with the 8th, 9th year that we're into now, I'd say the number one rookie mistake that I definitely made, and all of us, was underestimating completely how long it takes to make the kind of change that you want to change, or to realize a vision if you founded a company that's very vision based. So I remember I still have a slide deck that I first presented to prospective co-founders in 2011. And it was all just about, we will build the tech, and once it's done, everyone will see how amazing it is, and no problem, we'll find an exit, or the problem will solve itself, and we'll be all done. And I think all of us envisaged a timeline of maybe 1 to 3 years, and then we'd be back doing something else. So as you can see, it's about a decade of my life now that's going into this. And there's still a few years probably ahead if we want to realize our vision through that. So I'd say that's one thing I've seen that we made, very much a mistake on. And I see a lot of other people underestimate how long it may take. But at the same time, if I can spin that in a positive way, which is always the important thing to do in startups, it's if we're making those mistakes, it means that other people are making that. They're also underestimating the amount of time that it'll take for them to realize their vision. So if ever you're doubting yourself on it taking too long, don't forget that everyone else is too. They don't usually have a better, faster button than you. So so just persevering often is the and being resilient is often the best way to overcome that.
Thank you, Jeff. Great answer. And I imagine there's probably a few in the audience who can relate. My next question is for Dev. Dev, can you share with us what motivated you to start Bluewave AI, and how did you approach bootstrapping the company, specifically with respect to financing in the early days, and what resources or programs helped you in terms of funding or saving costs?
Well, so it's kind of complicated what motivated me, but probably what motivated me to start Bluewave was the same reason why I was in engineering school, like way back in the 80s. It was to, like, you wanted to basically invent something that people will use, right? So I didn't want to be working on donkey work or things that don't see the light of day, and things kind of like things that will have an impact on society. And actually, my first job, I was a software engineer on the CF-18 program in the Air Force during the first Gulf War. So I actually saw the stuff I was working on being used. Now, I would say intellectually, having the stuff that you do being used on warfare is not kind of like ideal, but at least it was being used. So I want to do through my whole career, I want to do something that was more impactful for society. And I saw an intersection of real-time computing, AI, and renewable energy actually when I was competing in the Hawaii Ironman back in 2006, when you bike through a wind farm and you run through a whole bunch of solar arrays in 38-degree heat, and you kind of see the power of the earth. And I was kind of thinking about, well, how is the stuff I'm involved with computing and networking, how is it applicable to, like, these guys are really doing something useful with their lives. And from there, kind of like one piece led to another. And then I kind of came to the intersection of AI, distributed computing, and distributed renewable energy, and how you can't have a single human who can keep tabs of all of this. So you need some computing and automation, and someone was going to make money doing that. And I figured it might as well be a company in Canada. And you know, if no one in Canada jumps in and takes that opportunity, someone in Austin or Bangalore or Shanghai is going to do it anyway. Because at the end of the day, you don't, there's, if something is a good idea, there's no single person on earth who's going to come up with that idea. There's probably going to be 5 to 25 people who have the same idea. So it's a matter of identifying the market opportunity and then out executing, because a bunch of smart guys with some computers can do the same thing as you, regardless of where they are. So coming back to the financing and the bootstrapping, you know, keeping in mind that anyone can do this, in the sense that if you put enough money and enough smart people at something, you're going to get ahead. As long as the idea is good and there's a societal problem to solve. So, you know, of course, when you're at the early stage and you have a cool idea, well, you know, no one wants to fund you until you actually do something. And that involves like rolling up your own sleeves and other people on like no, you know, basically on no paycheck. So of course that's what you do to get a startup off the ground, and you get a bunch of things working. And then you go out to some angel investor. So we did all of that. We did the angel investor thing. And, you know, we got really good advice from some advisors in terms of, you know, raising money, the appropriate amount of money for what you can deliver in the right time, and try to get the customer revenue as early as possible. Try to tie into any government programs that are there for innovation-oriented companies, such as IRAP. You know, there's in Ontario, there's the OCE. There's other programs like that we were able to tie into, and that actually helped us raise more angel investment capital from Canada, US, and Europe. Just having those funding agencies help us buy customers. So the first time you go to a customer, we're like, hey, we got this cool widget. And they're like, okay, but what do we need to do to try it? And of course, they're like, well, I would like you to pay. And they're like, well, we don't have any budget for you to pay. So that's when kind of like the IRAPs and the OCEs became useful. So I went with MOUs from the customers back to IRAP and OCE, and I said, hey, look, you know, I got Summerside signed up. We signed up Tata Power in Mumbai, India, and I said, look, I got these guys signed up. I just need some cash to do a first test program. And so then that helped. And then we turned around to angel investors with the same sheets of paper, and we said, hey, I got someone who wants to try my AI overseas, and I got this government fund who are saying, okay, we'll give you, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to get the ball rolling. It allows, you know, your employees to buy groceries finally, not be on the starvation program. And that helps like connect the dots. So now you don't have a contract with the first customer, but you have an MOU. You don't have any money from the first customer, but you have a government program helping you out with something, which then allows you to go to your potential investors, and they're like, okay, you know, here's 10K, here's 25K, here's 50K, 5K here, 25K there, 50K there. Suddenly it added up to $1.3 million in a pre-seed round from no one big, just a whole bunch of like, I think our biggest check was 130K, which was from a US-based investor. It's 100K US. And so they saw that there was market pull for the solution. We had to build it. And we were kind of like, it's almost like, you know, before you have a party, if you say you're having a party, no one's going to show up. You kind of have to say, what's the theme of the party, and who's, you know, who else is coming to the party? Why should I go there? And, you know, you get some cool people at the party, and suddenly it's like more people want to come. And before you know it, you got a critical mass. And I think as startup founders, you know, one of the things that we have to do is like create a critical mass of momentum, not just around our tech and our patents, but around like who's aligned with us. And so CANARIE also became a key partner in that process, because we can't afford cloud computing because we're dirt poor, and Canary's role is to help people at the stage that I was in with computing platforms, and it's not a commercial platform, but it's a pre-commercial platform, which saves you money, right? Like, you're just trying to, whatever you can get for free or close to free, you're trying to reduce your burn rate. And one of my board members always said, you should know your burn rate basically to the dollar at all times, because and I posted this in the LinkedIn thing about startups becoming successful. Once you overcome your burn rate with revenue, you're really successful, right? And then you're cash flow positive. So I think that's what we're all, that's part of the journey, I think, for all of us. So I'll, in a roundabout way, answering a few different things that I think too many guys want to get that big $1 million check from a single VC, or that $4 million check, when you can get 20K here, 10K there, and you can get all of this on really favorable terms, like really super favorable terms. But it's a lot of work spending time with a lot of 10 to 50 to 100K investors. But now they're your circle of supporters. So anyway, that's kind of how we kind of got the first piece of the company off the ground.
Thanks a lot, Deb. That's great information. It's interesting to hear the story around the early days of Bluewave AI. Obviously, I can tell you're quite a hustler and talk to lots and lots of people to get a bunch of people investing small amounts, which in the end, like you said, you get what you need to keep things moving forward, and using that in collaboration with some grant money from IRAP or OCE is fantastic. So thanks for sharing.
And one thing I would add to that, to entrepreneurs who are listening, don't underestimate what you know about your business, because a lot of fun guys, they're in a way they're watered down. For sure, they have tons of expertise on things that, like, we as entrepreneurs, whether we're techie entrepreneurs or business entrepreneurs, we're not finance people in general. Finance people generally don't start companies in general. Okay, there are some who do, but there's a lot of finance people in the VC world. They know how to run funds and manage the financial aspects of companies. But I think in the early days, the people who really know how to get this thing off the ground are you and your co-founders. And if your angel investors will largely leave you alone and trust you, and that's kind of, you got to kind of like make sure and by taking the 5K check here and 25K check there, most of them will leave you alone, because no one gave you a $1.5 million check. Now, if you take the $1.5 million check from one guy, that person's not leaving you alone. Anyway, so
good point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Deb. I think I'll move on to another question, and this one's a general question for anyone on the panel. Where is the best place to find federal or provincial programs to help fund a startup in Canada? And tell us which ones you've taken advantage of. Anybody want to start?
I'll start on that one.
Okay, Mike.
So Fundica.com. So that one was, I'm kind of saying that's one of the sources, but that's what we kind of do, is help people find funding. So free resource, you go there, it'll give you all the government sources, all the private sector. There's some other good sources out there too. A number of consulting firms have some lists and things like that, but certainly make it as easy as possible for you. And I say, if you go into it, the programs that are the most used right now and the most beneficial are for the companies that have been around for a little longer, the COVID programs. Generally, you need to have had some salary back in January, February, and experienced a little bit declines. But those programs we're seeing those heavily used. And the second area of programs that are quite good right now are the hiring programs. So the government's gotten extra generous there. So hiring either interns or new grads, there's a fair bit of money for that. And there's also a fair bit of talent that's come out. So it's a good time in many ways for startups to get funding and to hire some new people in this period. So yeah, so anyway, those are my kind of thoughts. Thanks for the easy question on that one, Tom. But I'm also curious what others have experienced as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's good advice. Anybody else want to offer anything from the panel? Sure, go ahead, Margaret.
We have received the major source, especially because we are an innovative company and deep tech. So we do a lot of research and in collaboration with some universities. So IRAP has been a major source of and a great supporter of our company. Economic Development Canada as well. And we have profited also from the, before it was called Going Global Innovation. Now I think it's more like the trade commissioners. And this was a key way for us to get clients abroad. So today we export to 14 countries and a lot has been done with the help of trade commissioners and such programs.
That's awesome.
I can add really quick that Shred is wonderful, and definitely talk to Mike about that. In our case, when you get your Shred, your scientific research and experimental development check after you've proven that you've done your research and development, it comes always after your fiscal year. So it's always something to look forward to. And there's times where you say, maybe I'll give up. Then you know that Shred check is coming, find a way to get to that check, and it gives you just a little boost to keep going. And I don't know how many times you had to get over that, but it's any little win like that is great.
Yeah, that's another good one for sure.
Add on with that, like one thing I still get this comment is Shred is, so it's tax credits. It's refundable for the most part, so meaning you get money even if you don't owe taxes. So it's basically the same as a grant, it's just a little bit later.
Tom, I could add another one that's been very helpful for Bluewave, and not every startup in Canada would be able to apply to this, but the Sustainable Development Technologies Canada Fund, it's a grant. They give you 40 cents on the dollar for innovative projects in clean technologies. Now, the challenge with SDTC, especially for early stage, is it is an encyclopedia of application process. Like from the first day that we engaged with SDTC to the first dollar in our bank account was 17 months.
Wow.
During which we did the initial screening document, submitted all of that, following which we had to provide the initial full proposal, 50, 60 slide deck that has to answer a whole bunch of things. You go through that proposal, you meet with their screening committee, you go through that, then you have a whole bunch of questions and answers. You go through all of that. Then they start the due diligence process and they come on site and they grill your team about every aspect of the technology, your business, your ability to execute on it. You go through that. Then there's another round of clarification, Q&A, something like 50-something questions, each of which needs a page-long answer maybe. And then after that, all of that is done, you go to their board, and it's supposed to be at that stage. If you're going in front of their board, the plan is that you're getting funded. But then that's another 2 to 3 months. And then after the board meets, a letter of intent is issued, at which point technically the project kicks off. But then there's a contracting phase that takes 3 months before you see any more pennies come in. Having said that, I actually gave them credit after we went through that process, that whole process actually strengthened, it made us into a real corporation. It took us out of a bunch of guys in the garage to, it's a real, like everything is, at that point you have all the machinery of a real corporation, all the back office infrastructure. If you don't have all of that, you're not going to get through. So in a way, it's kind of like it's kind of like when you go for the track team tryouts in high school, you know how to run, but then before you go to run at provincials, your track coaches put you through the ringer, so you're ready to compete at the provincial level. Let's say if you're a high school athlete, it's kind of like that. They're basically training, they're putting the clean tech startups through the ringer. But when they bring you to the other side, you're definitely a lot stronger. Your investment ready, your IP portfolio is completely like you've thought it out, and a whole bunch of things are tied up. And for me as an older entrepreneur, it's all the stuff you already know. It just whips your butt to actually go do it. And if you're a young entrepreneur, you might not have lived through all of these things, and you got to go do it. They help you out. So, I would say some of these programs where the government jumps in and makes you do a bunch of stuff, they're kind of worthwhile from a company building angle.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, certainly sounds like a very, very rigorous process. But in the end, if you're developing your back office for your business, and I'm sure you were able to reuse a lot of the documentation that you assembled for that application process for other pieces of business or interaction for going after funding or what have you. It's all good, right?
Yeah, you have the machinery in place to execute on a bunch of business things that you need to have. You got to build it in your company anyway. For Jeff, their company's been around for longer. Our company's we've been around for 3 years. So it takes a while to build up all that machinery to start off. So, Jeff, you would have built it up ages ago. There's no biggie for you today, but maybe 2 years in or whatever, it'd be like, oh yeah, right. All our CRA report, like all those things. Now everything's like set up.
Yeah, at the time it probably felt like a mountain to climb, right?
Yeah, and it's not even company building. It's like I can't ship this stuff to customers. I can't generate revenue of all of this toil for all this stupid government reporting. But once it's there, then it's like the foundation of the house. You can't sell land with the foundation, right? Like it's the useless, but you need it. So
right, got it. That's some great advice from everybody on the panel. Thanks a lot. I'm going to move on to the next question, and this one goes to Margaret. So, Margaret, Ananda is a Montreal-based startup. They're leveraging nanotechnology and the neuroscience studies. Can you share some of the challenges or perhaps maybe even advantages of starting a biomed company in a city that's considered to be one of the centers of excellence for neurological sciences in all of Canada?
Well, that's what attracted me in the first place to move to Montreal almost 15 years ago, was exactly the strength in neuroscience and nanotechnology. And definitely, we have the best environment. We have 5 universities in place. I think it's the largest program of neuroscience in North America. So actually, I'm almost sure Montreal has the second highest number of PhDs per capita. I think it's just after Boston. So if we're going for deep tech, biotech, or anything related to deep science, definitely Montreal is a great place to find the right people and the right partnership. Unfortunately, we do not have an incubator, for instance, for biotech. It's something that we miss a lot. Like if you go to North Carolina, they have over 200 incubators for biotech. And what's the importance of North Carolina to the US compared to Quebec to Canada? So I think this is something we should really, every time I have the chance, I push with the federal and provincial governments that we need more space, because it's an expensive field. Like it's not like opening something in your garage. You really need microscopes, you need a clean room, we need to manufacture things, and we need the high tech, the deep tech equipment that we only find in universities or in research centers. So for a startup, either we raise tons of funds, like there's some companies at the MIT raising 90 million or something like that, so they can buy the equipment themselves, or we should have an incubator in place for biotechs with all the equipment that we could share. So I think the major, I said, the main advantage is the brain. I mean, we have the brains in the city. And the major challenge definitely is the lack of space dedicated for all those brains to really put their heads together and bring more innovation to the country.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you raised a good point about, trying to lobby with provincial or federal governments to help support or add more accelerator incubators in this field of study in Montreal, where you have all the brain power. It makes a lot of sense.
Yes, if I may add, now with COVID more than ever, we're looking for innovation. We're looking for people working in the biotech field, and how can they thrive? This was, again, one of our major challenges, because during COVID, all the universities closed while our company continued to work. So we had to go around and try to find other partners and other suppliers of some, like microscopy services, for instance, to make sure we could deliver on time to our clients.
Yeah, and the other point too about, it's an expensive area to develop in because of the necessity of having all that expensive equipment at your availability too, right? I can kind of relate to that. Many years ago, I was involved with an early stage startup company that was developing some software for the telecom field. And in order to sell to the big carriers, it's a long sales cycle. You have to put your software, which needs to run on equipment, in their labs, and they'll trial it for maybe a year or more in their lab before they'll, write a PO for the first purchase. And a small startup company, if you don't have those relationships with the equipment vendors to get that gear on consignment or something in to put it into the labs, it'll quickly sink or burn you from not having the funds to put your software on equipment in the lab environment.
And if I may add, putting together was the previous question, which was about funding from the federal government. This is a challenge as well, because most of the funding goes to universities. When we partner with for an R&D technology, the funding go all to the university. So we do not have any way as a startup or as a small company to buy a microscope for $200,000 or something. We don't even need it. It's just a temporary thing. If we had an incubator, it would be fine. But even if we want to buy for any reason, we don't have the option, because most of those funds, when we apply, I don't know, like CQDM fund or any other those calls that we have in the market today for collaboration with universities, the funds and for equipment and everything goes also to the university. So we have very well equipped university facilities, but it's a huge challenge for the biotech companies to have access to those equipment. Right.
Well, that's some great insight. Thank you, Margaret. I think I'll move to the next question. This one's for you, Mike. Mike, I know you've spent many years helping other startups address the critical need to find sources of funding to thrive and survive. Can you give us some advice or impart to the audience regarding when they know they're ready to seek funding and what type of funding to chase and how to prepare for the big ask?
Sure. Pleasure, Tom. So I make sure you can hear me well. I saw there was a little problem with my audio in the last time. Can you hear me fine now?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. So for that question, I think there are really three things that I would focus on if you're thinking about going to get funding. The first thing is follow systematic steps in how you do it. So a little bit like how Dev explained his path and Margaret did as well, and to some degree Jeff. Really follow those steps, and Dev actually said it pretty well. The first thing you want to do is kind of pre-funding steps. So these are steps where you go out and say, let me validate this idea as best I can. Let me build a little team around it, and I need to actually get a little bit of money. Nobody actually just gives you need a bit of money to survive as you're fundraising, as you're getting money, as you're doing other things. So you need those three things in your kind of pre-financing stage. If you don't have those three done, don't go get funding. You really need those three done as best as possible, because you'll start tripping up when you get to it. When you get the funding, you have to continually follow some steps as well. And the steps are go get the government funding, like Dev did, like Margaret has done, and I know that Jeff and I have done some of that together as well. Go get the government funding, find out what's available, get what you can. It's validation points, it's the cheapest, it's really the best source of funding available. Even if you're very profitable, go get that government funding. It makes sure you get what makes sense for you. The second step after that in the funding is go talk to the banks if you have cash flow or assets. Most startups don't. If you happen to be in that fortunate situation, go get that bank financing next. Don't go right to the equity, go to the bank one. It's cheaper. The equity one you have to pay back just like you have to pay back the bank one. And for the most part, there's a lot of guarantees that can be put around early stage companies for the loans. So go get those if required as well. And then if you really have to, it's the worst form of funding available, VCs, angels. That is the most expensive, most complicated. But if you really need it, go get it. Everyone kind of says, oh, I dream of getting that $1 million funding. Again, coming back to Deb says, it's actually much more than a loan. You now owe back more than $1 million. They're expecting probably at least a 25% return annually, or they're not going to be happy. So it's something, go ahead if you need it, but only if you need it. So first kind of piece of advice is be systematic, follow those steps. If you don't hit one of those steps, go back and do it again. So it's kind of like going around a Monopoly board. You got to go around it properly, just jumping to the end. It doesn't work. Second thing is really build relationships. So if you're thinking about fundraising, build these relationships. So with Canary, build your relationship if you want to, use their platform, understand it, work with it. Is this the kind of area you want to be in? If it is, build that relationship. Use it, test it out. Help add on other things. If this is really core to what you're doing, build that relationship. Same thing with funding. Go build those relationships with the people that really make a difference for you, not just because they happen to have lots of money or not just because they call themselves a VC or the like, but build those relationships and build kind of win-win relationships. So help them and they'll help you. And the last thing is really understand the funders you're going to speak to. So if you're going to get a tax credit, it's not actually about building big friends. It's about satisfying the legislation. It's about fitting into the tax code. Doesn't matter if you're saving the world. Who cares if you're hiring people? That doesn't matter. Are you actually doing technological advancement, technological uncertainty? Are you doing a systematic approach according to a certain paragraph in the tax code? So understand that. However, if you're going to build a fintech, go speak to the best investors you can find. Start with locally and then move out from there. The best ones you can find that invest in fintech. Going to speak to one of Margaret's investors who invest in biotech, not the right person if you're fintech. There's some that cross over, but very rare. So make sure you speak to the right people. So understand the funders from the government side all the way down. So those 3 steps: be systematic, build relationships continuously, and understand the funders that you're working with.
Thanks, Mike. Solid advice. Dev, did you want to add something to that? You looked like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, from that perspective of going to the right investors at the right time, my perspective was more from an ecosystem perspective. And you see the announcements like on Beta Kit or at Globe and Mail, basically celebrating when founders, companies raise like big chunks of venture capital, right? And the way I've explained it to my employees is like getting money from investor is like begging your parents for money when you have a family, right? Like you don't want to actually ask your parents for money to feed your kids and send them to university and like basic things like that, right? You want to be self-sufficient, as close to self-sufficient as possible. And there's been some good stories out there. I think it's Shopify waited 6 years to go to their first institutional round, and they did their product market fit. They they pivoted, they reiterated, and they refined their business for a while before they went to the point to get other people's money to scale it, right? And I think coming to the point of Mike's using all of those steps, but then we've discussed with our board, like when are we ready to scale like our business and potentially take a big chunk of external money. So we maybe I'm an idiot for doing this. We've turned down external money because we felt like we didn't have our act together enough to scale to the expectation that external money would have at that point in time. And just for the sake of saying, like it would be easy to get sucked into the we raised this much capital, we're going to grow our company by this many headcount and so forth. And, as an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, that will give us security and great. I'll be able to hire this many more people to do what we need to do. But really, when you go do that, it's almost like you're quitting Bluewave version 1 or version 2 and go get a new job with Bluewave version 3 with a new set of investors, right? And so now the next day you're going to work for a different company. It's not the same company that you had yesterday. And and any founders that have this weird illusion that they're in charge of their boat are hallucinating, because as soon as you take someone else's money, you work for them. And I've told my employees, if you work for any founders, CEOs who took external money, and they're like, the most important thing are the people inside the company, they're kind of bullshitting you, because the moment they've taken someone else's company, they're not reporting to themselves anymore. You're reporting to your investors. And so I think it's, to Mike's point, there's a timing when you get the right investor on board. Like I can't go to Margaret's investor and say, hey, we're doing a clean tech AI play, jump in with us, and get that person on our board, and they'll wreak havoc, and just like someone from my board would be completely useless in Margaret's company. So the timing of taking other people's money, getting to work for them by having them on our boards, it's not a, the money it's almost like an afterthought. Everything else in the term sheet and the culture and structure with all those people is going to be make or break tomorrow when you take the job with the new round of investors. So that would be like my building on what Mike said, many of the things that we've discussed, I'm sure Margaret can Jeff can amplify on that, and with a lot of the interesting war stories of their own. But yeah, just raising the money is not that's not the golden egg.
Yeah, it's not the be all end all. Go ahead, Margaret.
I think it's not only about timing. There's about also the personal situation and also the type of technology, right? If you're opening something that you can start with your computer, or you don't need much funds to start, this is much easier. But if you're starting a company where you need a certain amount of money from the beginning to produce, to manufacture something, you need more money. Also, there's a lot of people who are wealthy, and I know many people who start biotechs or deep tech companies from their own pockets, or from their parents' pockets. How we want to say whatever they want. But some people really don't have the chance, but they have a great idea, and they want to bring it to the market. I think taking a bit of what Dev said, I think most important is that choose very wisely your investors. This is the key point here. And this was the best advice I ever received, because I was, pitching to so many people, and there is this type of like San Francisco mood, like, hustle, selling, and you just go there and do whatever. But none of them, or some of them, were completely not aligned with how my vision for my company. And the best advice was from the CEO group that I'm part of. And then she said, find someone that, don't waste your time pitching to people that they can have tons of money, but if they're not well aligned with you, you will not have your company at the end. And finally, I found the right investors. And today I'm extremely happy. My investors, they have added a lot to the company, not only financially, but also, are people that I meet with them. It's a pleasure meeting with them. It's a pleasure discussing with them. And they always brought new opportunities, new people. This is rare, I have to say, but I really cherry pick. And it took longer, of course, to be where we are now. This week, we're celebrating 5 years of the company, and I'm super proud of that. And as I said, exporting to different countries. We have
so your company's a Scorpio too.
It's a Scorpio.
Because ours will be 3 and 2 on Halloween, actually. So our company's a Scorpio.
I don't know what it means. But...
Oh, the Scorpio means it's the the calendar months that you're born in.
The birth month.
Like their
zodiac sign of the company.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, yes, but choosing the right investors, definitely, it's even better than about the astrology.
Okay. Go ahead. Jeff wants to add.
Sure, I'll throw one more in there too. And being the oldest company here, you might be thinking that we're the ones who have the most investors and raise the most money, and I'm sure we have the fewest investors and raise the least money. And that's despite being a company that had actual hardware, like electronic hardware that we've like certified for FCC and IC and all these different things. We've, for the most part, bootstrapped over this entire time, doing an accelerator in 2012 that got us up a level. And aside from that, it was using the government programs wisely. And with the investors, it's kind of like I don't know, dating or something like that, where you can get into something if you desperately want to be in a relationship, right? But if it's not healthy, it's not going to magically get better, right? So in our case, it's not that we weren't looking, and there were opportunities for us to take money at many different junctures. And generally the co-founders look at each other and say, I think it's more important we stick to our purpose, that this may take us in a direction we don't necessarily want to go. It's really hard to do that when you haven't taken a salary for a long time. People have families. But if you make it as a collective decision, you can actually stretch really far. So, stretch as far as you can. And if you find that perfect investor like Margaret did, definitely don't hesitate and go forward, because when you have resources, you can do more, right? Yeah. Someone else will probably get that kind of money. And if you really are the kind of person who knows how to play the VC game, then sure, you can play that game. But again, it's when you take VC money, it's kind of like, imagine celebrating a chef for buying the ingredients, right? That's what someone told me once. When you take, a VC check, you're like, it's like, wow, you bought the ingredients, the meal isn't there. You don't know if it's great or not, right? But if it's a good enough chef and they really need access to those incredible ingredients and you can imagine that meal, that's where VC works well, but it's not a fit for everyone.
That's awesome. Great, solid advice all the way around. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to move to another general question for the panel. Wondering if you ever struggled to find talent to fill a skills gap that you had, and if so, can you share what kind of talent you were seeking, whether it was technical, sales, marketing, other, and where ended up being the best place or tactic even to find that talent? Anybody want to start?
I guess I could start. So my background is not in power systems, even though my bachelor's degree was in electric, and my bachelor's and master's were in electrical engineering. I wasn't in power systems. My whole career went in networking and supercomputing and AI workloads. And so I had this idea about how all of these techniques could be used to solve problem in electrical power systems with renewable energy. But, I had a gap there where that's, I can talk it at a marketing and a business level, but someone's got to implement this thing, right? And so there's a lot of great research in Canada in many areas. And I thought back to my time in the Air Force, and I was like, you know what? There's no one, the Air Force does not go and get the next fighter pilot, the next Army general, the next naval commander. They don't get these guys off the street. So they actually go and seek out the raw DNA of what it takes to become a pilot or, a frontline infantry soldier or whatever. And then they bring them that person in and they groom them. And I swung both ways, and I thought, well, I could try to get like an experienced guy with utility background or whatever, or I could go into the universities and get some top end researchers who are researching the cutting edge. They might not have all the experience, but they got the fundamental intellect, and they have the energy and the drive to like change the world and do something special. And I think I can impart on them the business skill and the leadership skill, and how to put the Lego blocks together in the company. But I got to get all of these raw blocks and then organize them, right? And I felt like that would be a good source of talent for me, is going like straight into of technical talent, to go straight into the university research labs for some of the core innovation and algorithmic things. And then what from the perspective of productization, now you need guys who know how to take stuff to market. So that, Tom, you've met my director of engineering, Hubert Sugang, guys like that who got like 5-10 years under their belt, who deliver stuff, 5 nines of reliability and all of that. So I felt like I needed a combo, because my budget is low too, right? So you need to get, I'm sure Jeff and Margaret have gone through this. You need to get some rock stars who will buy into your vision. Your budget's low, so you have to compensate them with a whole bunch of other things that they might not be able to get at like Nokia or Cisco or, multinational companies. So they get compensated with other things in terms of, the leadership opportunities, the career growth opportunities, the innovation opportunities. And then you get a whole bunch of young people who are like just driven, they're like NHL rookies. They just want to win the Stanley Cup, right? It doesn't matter. You could pay, you know, someone who makes the Montreal Canadiens, you could pay that guy $5,000 a year. If he has a chance to, no, I don't know if Montreal is a good example today in terms of winning the Stanley Cup, but if you have a chance to play, you know, on a championship team, you know, you're going to jump at it. So I think a combination, but my personal view is trying to get like super experienced, high priced talent out of multinational corporations. I don't think that's a really, I don't think that's the right profile person, at least in the early days, to get your staff off the ground, right? Like you really need people who will work on your budget, on overdrive, and out innovate, right? So it's like, how do I put a team together for that? It's a tough balancing act, because we can never pay enough in the early days, and the people we get have to out innovate and out collaborate the guys in multinationals. So
Yeah. Okay, Jeff.
I can add a little bit of that, and we'll try and make it a panel where we don't all just agree with each other. And I'll say that actually I think corporate's a pretty interesting place to grab people from. You can't grab people who are corporate for life, because the startup thing generally isn't a good fit, right? It's the title doesn't matter, the culture matters the most. But what you can find are the people who've gone to corporate because they got out of a startup, because they bet the farm on it, and they had to crawl back to corporate for a while. They did their thing, they made their contacts and connections, and they're looking just to get back into something fun, and they have just enough runway that they're willing to get back into it. That can be very fun. And again, if I look at in our team, most of the people who joined with us and stuck for quite a while and really added to our culture and really thrived within that startup culture were people who were entrepreneurs at heart, but at certain points in their lives had to go work and make the regular paycheck. And then if you give them the opportunity to do something they're good at, they like, they're pretty, sometimes they're easy to attract, and then will give a lot because they're just so excited to actually be able to do stuff without red tape.
Hey, that's actually neat. You just described my path.
Hands down, startups are way more fun than working for large enterprise. Okay.
Hi, Tom. Sorry. Hi, Tom. Didn't mean to cut in here, but we actually have a large amount of audience questions right now that I've stockpiled up. If the panel wouldn't mind tackling some of those. So Elsa,
let's do it.
If you have those ready.
Okay, yes, indeed, we do have some questions. So first of all, the first question is for you, Tom. So how well does Canary infrastructure translate to pay-to-pay clouds like AWS Cloud and Azure, for example? Can you answer that question for us?
Sure. So the current incarnation of the Canary DAIR cloud is a hybrid cloud. We have access to AWS, Azure, as well as our own OpenStack private cloud, where we make GPUs available for machine learning type applications. I don't want to derail this conversation. If you want to find out more about the DAIR program, I'll mention how to get access to information, or Cynthia, our program manager, later in the session.
Perfect, we'll do that. As we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there will be a follow-up with the link to the recording, so we can probably add some links. I know that some attendees were interested in having some links from Mike as well with regards to funding, so we'll do that for sure. There is another question that relates to IP ownership and collaboration and research with universities. So anyone amongst you that wants to talk about his experience with working with university researchers and who might be able to share some insight? I guess Margaret would be a good candidate for that.
Yes, so this is also something that we do have a long path to improve here in Canada. So if we look a bit, all the universities in the Valley, like Stanford or University of California, the MIT, Harvard, they have a very clear policies on how they go with really helping startups, because all the universities were first trying to protect their IP and their researchers. And then what they did was, I'm not giving away all the work we done here for large corporations, and they are not well adapted to the system of the boom of startups that came around recently. So what happened is the universities in California, they adapted really quickly. They were used to this, so they made a very easy path for startups to start their companies, license the IP from that they developed themselves at the university, and it's a very different licensing agreement from what they have with a large corporation or something like that. Here in Canada, we still have most of universities, I guess. There is an exception of the university in Ontario that is more forward thinking and has an easier path. Otherwise, what I suggest is having very, very clear agreements from the beginning with whoever you are working with. So I developed my technology at McGill. So we licensed the technology from McGill to our company when we started the company. Now I do collaborate with several universities in Canada and abroad. And whenever we do a collaboration from the beginning, we don't open our mouth without an NDA. Everything is extremely clear where we're going on and who has what from which point. And I think this is full transparency. And this is something that working with professionals from the industry, I learned pretty quickly that the importance of confidentiality when you're developing a company and we have partners at universities.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's quite a comprehensive answer there. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question because the time is running out and I really want to give the opportunity for our participants to raise a question. So this one is not addressed to anyone in particular. What is the step to take to transition from a crude basic MVP technology developed by a single person into a real business, and how do you make this step? Jeff?
Make someone pay for it. That's in the shortest possible answer. It's if you can get someone to pay for something you've created, you are in a wonderful place. That's really the objective, is get a paying customer, and then everything else will fall into place. And I think Deb talked about it a little bit before. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can play, as he was playing, the MOU card, other things, but get to the point where someone really wants what they think you're building, and then try and get it into their hands so that they can pay for it.
Dev, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that was going to be pretty well my answer. Like, you don't have a product or you don't have a company if someone can't use it and open a wallet for it, right? So now, sometimes the hardest part is finding the person who opened the wallet. You might actually have something that someone on the planet will use, but you actually have to find the first one. As soon as you find the first one, the next ones will follow. And the first ones might not be the ones you think they are. They might not be the ones with proximity. They might not be in your network. They might fall out of the sky at you because you didn't think about those particular customers. And then sometimes you need luck and a tailwind too. You could do all the analysis you want and all the networking you want, and the right one. And the one thing that I would say is find someone, a customer for that product that's small enough who collaborate with you without too many decision makers, too many cooks in the kitchen on the customer side. Ideally, 1 or 2 people on the customer side to use the tech, the product, and work with you and get it going. But also a path where that person has to get a whole bunch of signatures to pay you. So a small amount of people who work with you, but that person has to fight to go get you signatures to get paid. You don't want to have too many people in the decision-making loop for the payment. So, and by definition, sometimes having multinational customers or large organizations as lead customers will get in the way for us. So we don't have, our time to money is critical to get that product from the 1-person or 5-person concept to, it's deployed and someone's paying for it.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll move on to the next question, which is about incorporation. What is the best way to incorporate, provincially or federally? Anyone wants to jump in?
I put a bit of an answer in there. I think from a funding point of view, there's really no difference. There's a bit of difference legally or governance. I'll probably leave that for a lawyer to go into details, but in certain provincial incorporations and the federal one, there are different requirements for foreign directors, allowable foreign directors or no allowable necessary foreign directors. That is a big influence. And also, obviously, which jurisdictions you're operating in. Are you going to operate across the country or just stay in one province? It's going to be a little easier if you incorporate federally if you're working across all the provinces. But you can incorporate provincially and still work your way across the provinces. So that's my perspective. I'm not a lawyer, but that's kind of summary of what I think you'd expect.
One intangible from being federally incorporated, it's just a marketing thing when you go to sell overseas and you go like, we're federally, we have federal incorporation in Canada. For whatever it's worth, I mean, it kind of gives it some additional validity. Like no one knows where Ontario is or where BC is, like if you go overseas, sadly. They barely know where Canada is, so, well, maybe they know more than that, but, if you tell them, like, if I tell them Ottawa, they're like, well, where's that? Like, isn't the capital of Canada Toronto? Right? Yeah, yes, you're right. Just
That's a great point. So I don't have any further question at this point. We do have a few minutes left. So if you want to address your questions, please do it now. Otherwise, I'll pass the floor back on to Mike and to Tom. Tom, you can maybe ask a final question and wrap things up with our speakers, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, I can do. Let's see, I still have a few questions in the queue. If I was going to ask one more, which one do I want to do here? Actually, maybe I'll ask one of the questions that's general for the round table, really about the pandemic and the impact it's had. And now more than ever, as we deal with global pandemic, it's critical to be ready and able to drive and conduct your business digitally. What steps have you taken to market differently? And have you moved any part of your business online so that you could conduct more business without face-to-face interaction?
I can say really quick that just for the entrepreneurs listening, when the pandemic hit, our biggest customer, which at the time was Cirque du Soleil, disappeared like within a week, kind of. And, we had to flip it all around, plus the mix of, alternating at the office of when people can be there and everything. But, we got through that part okay. And I think the way we looked at it, having been through so many other things that weren't pandemics, but felt like they were worse than a pandemic, frankly, we said, we'll find the opportunity in this, and we moved what we sold in our business towards and oriented towards what people really needed and what they were the new missing things in the market and what was making people afraid. And it's, we're still around, so things are looking okay. So that's what we did. We really had to turn it all around.
Yeah, Jeff, you already had like an e-commerce part of your website to sell some of the equipment, right? So, but did you change or augment your online presence to make it easier to sell professional services or anything like that?
One thing we did is, and you brought it up before, Tom, we're very open source focused. And in the month of April, where we couldn't do anything, like we couldn't go to the office, nothing happened. Myself and one of my colleagues, we said, let's just write amazing documentation for developers. So we took the month of April and we just posted a whole bunch of stuff on github.io. And I mean, our SEO for this stuff went up 8-fold. There are people that use other people's products that find us first because our documentation is better. And that was just a great way to sort of say, look, if the ship's going to sink, at least we'll sink with good documentation, or people will find us and we'll do some kind of good for the world and feel better about ourselves. And it's actually turned into good business, and it's allowed us to open up new channels of business. Just by being transparent, people found us for that. So I'm very happy we did that. So to answer your question, it's yes, we have people reaching out for things that they wouldn't have before because they think that we're experts in something because we wrote something about it that makes sense.
That's awesome. Mike, did you have something else to add?
Sure. So our story is a little different. So pandemic, actually, all the government programs coming in, everything going online. So we actually got a big surge in volume. We signed up some new clients like Desjardins. We're now they're kind of place to go for find funding, and a few other financial institutions and governments. So we are actually hit with the problem of a good problem, the kind of one you want, where we had to get done, and suddenly we had to do it not all being in the office. So we were faced with that problem. One of the employees got caught overseas and it was complicated to get back, and he was a developer, he was integral to the whole process. So we had challenges that way. You know, I think very much though, like the thing, even if you're very busy or if you were actually, you know, got very light, it's challenging on everybody. It's challenging on, at the end of the day, either medically get the virus, or I think if you don't, it's still challenging on mental health. You know, you're too busy, and suddenly, you know, for the first 3 months, I was working every day, every night, every weekend, all the time. We had more than we could deliver. We almost knew we couldn't deliver everything that we had to do. The volume was going crazy. Emails were coming in everywhere. We weren't really equipped for that. And you want to try and do what you've always done and be responsive and, you know, and all that. But I guess you prioritize. And so that was a challenge for us. It kind of came back to a bit of more normal by the summer for us. And who knows, maybe by the end of the pandemic, you know, if the economy is super slowing down, it may actually slow down too. So it's kind of, my advice, first and foremost, would probably be on a personal level, make sure you're taking care of yourself, no matter how things are going. You know, if you're doing really well, put money in the bank. If you're not doing well, like kind of health-wise, you know, look to the future, kind of round it out. So that's probably the most important thing. Second, you know, after that, the business and all that, you know, that's secondary. So kind of prioritize big picture things. And in some ways, it's just being lucky that you're busy, or unlucky if you're not, you know. We did the roadshow for years. If we were trying to do the roadshow this year, it would have been a disaster. We were just fortunate we were focused online, 100% online. So, you know, but I think, look long term, and I think this is going to last a little while. So plan long term. Having said that, I think it's still a great time to do business. It's an excellent time to start a business. There's never been more funding around. There's tons of talent available. So I'm very optimistic that, you know, we're all going to come out of this and with great opportunities and in great shape. But it's going to take a bit of patience and hard work and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, some good advice there, Mike, for sure. Margaret, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I think we're on the lucky side of the COVID pandemic, because as a biotech and in the fields, we got more clients, especially related to vaccines. And because we're in Canada and the pandemic didn't hit us as hard, we can also offer services, because many companies doing what we do or similar to what we do in the US and other countries, they have closed, or, you know, depending on where they are, they cannot operate properly. So instead of only selling products, we started selling services. But of course, we're facing all the challenges of the pandemic, especially with logistics. Like FedEx never delivers anything on time anymore. But I think most important is really make sure that our team is in good health, that everyone, and keep people working, because it's really hard for those, especially here in Montreal. There are so many people alone, and staying at home is a huge challenge for mental health. So that's our target, the patients with neurological disorders. Just bringing everyone to the lab, making sure they are healthy, and knowing that we have a purpose, a mission. I think this changed a lot of lives.
Okay, great. Elsa, I just want to check time. Should I be wrapping up, or?
I'll just throw one more questions with regards to IP, going back to IP. So is IP a must requirement for startup? At the beginning, especially financially difficult situation, how to license in an IP?
Can I throw something out real quick?
Yep.
We had this debate in 2012, do we patent or do we publish, right? So intellectual property, there's different paths that you can take. For some companies, I'm sure, Margaret, you need to own that IP, like that has to be part of your company. That's the core of everything. In our case, there was two ways to play it. One is that it's the expertise on top of the IP that's worth more than the IP itself. We actually went the route of publishing. So if you want to patent something, you're looking at 5-figure amounts, and some of the IP protection can be very expensive and time consuming. If you have a master's degree or PhD or something, you can publish in a conference some of your stuff. You effectively make it public domain, and you prevent others from patenting or controlling the IP. You make things, you give freedom to operate. So there's two paths. Just wanted to let you know that the freedom to operate path can be very cost effective if you don't need to own the IP.
Yeah, we in our area, it's kind of a green field in terms of freedom to operate, and we've chosen a dual path, Mike. So a bunch of things we've published and put in the public domain, and we've also aggressively embarked on I would say for ours, like now we're up to 7 patents in some key areas that we think we have some key pre-product areas where we want to kind of like grab that land, and we figure that in a couple of years the multinationals are really going to get involved in the area we're in, and if we have a moat around us in terms of patents, the only way a VP of product management at Siemens or at GE or whatever gets involved is, they got to put like tens of millions of dollars into their own team and work around what we have. And of course, the publishing path also makes them, at least they can't patent that because it's in the public domain. So it's kind of a combination, but I think I think for like at the earliest stage too, if you think you're going to go the fundraising path with institutional investment, it's going to raise the valuation to some degree. I mean, you still need customers, you need product that works, you need a team, but on top of that, if there's for investors, they can't see, like, as far as they're concerned, all founders are bullshit artists and they're blowing smoke. So the only thing they can see is customer revenue and patents. Those two things are irrefutable. Everything in between is a gut feel on, the founders, the business, the competition, the analysts, and all of that. But revenue on one side, patents on the other side, and those the investors can, like, there's no debating those. So those kind of just strengthen the fort, I think. That's my past experience was along those lines.
Okay, last word to Margaret.
About the IP, so my field is mined. So wherever we go, there's several patent applications, large corporations involved. So most important of all is your knowledge and expertise at the end of the day. Of course, for investment, for a company to raise funds, you need IP, but to provide services to large corporations, pharma, cosmetic companies, vaccine companies, you need know-how. So invest in your team. And if you're looking for a patent, I strongly recommend to talk to one of the, if you're at a university, they have great advisors. Otherwise, the Canadian government has some. and see what's the best way to protect your invention with the minimum funds, because there's plenty of ways to protect it.
Great. Elsa, should I wrap up, or is there any other questions?
Yes, please. I'm very conscious of the time that's running. It's
okay.
I know we're in great company and we could carry on for hours, but I'm.
I know.
I think that would be taking a little bit.
Okay.
Over to you to wrap up a few.
Sure, I'll say a few words and I'll pass it back to you, Elsa. Maybe Eric, you can put up the slide with the contact information. I know there were some interest or questions about the DAIR cloud program. If you work at a small medium enterprise, or you're an entrepreneur in Canada who can benefit from access to free cloud resources for a full year, please visit our website at www.canary.ca/cloud and click on the apply button. It's a short, simple form to apply, and approvals usually take 1 or 2 days at most. And if you have any questions about CEIM services, I encourage you to contact Elsa. Her email address is on this slide now. We'll be sharing the recording of this, so you'll see it later as well. If you're looking for more information about the DAIR program, please contact Cynthia Emerson. She's our program manager with the email address here. To our panel, thank you, Dev, Jeff, Margaret, and Mike, for taking time today to give back to the startup community. I'm constantly amazed and immensely appreciative for all that you do for the up and coming entrepreneurs, all while making sure that your business continues to flourish. We wish you all the continued success. Once again, thank you for your generosity and amazing advice today. Elsa, any final remarks?
I'll echo to that too. So thank you, first of all, Tom, for animating that great panel. Thank you for our speakers, for sharing the experience and for sharing some practical advice. I'm sure it's very appreciated. And I think we can all draw inspiration from your courage, your resilience, and your determination, particularly in those dark times. So thank you very much. Just wanted to say thank you to our participants, obviously, for taking time out of their busy days. As we mentioned, there would be a recording that would be made available, so stay tuned and keep an eye on your inbox for that. For those of you who are interested, CEIM will be hosting another webinar on November 17th with one of our partners, le CEDRIN, le Centre de Développement de Recherche, de Développement et de Recherche en Intelligence Numérique, to talk about the collaboration between our two organizations and how we can help startup in the new media. So that's it for me. So thank you very much once again. And until next time, stay healthy and safe. Thank you all.
Thank you.